So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to, well, for me, Lunch and Learn. Today's been sponsored Le'ilui Nishmat Setei Moshel Yitzchak Ben Abu, and we thank very much so the sponsors, all of you for coming, and Hashem should bless the sponsors that they should have only nachas and simcha and everything good in this world. Bezrat Hashem, everything good for Klal Yisrael. And Baruch Hashem, Ishtabach Shema. I would like to publicly give my thanks to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. First of all, for apologies for being away. I've been away for 2 weeks. Now I can tell you, 2 weeks ago it was to meet a young man, and last week it was to announce the engagement of my daughter. Baruch Hashem, Ishtabach Shema. And I'm now putting in my excuses already because the engagement will be in London next week, so I'll be away, Bezrat Hashem, B'Sh'at Tovah, for next week as well. But I wish you all only epic amounts of smachot and nachat and everything good, please God. And apologies for being so, and grateful to Ben for standing in and giving such excellent shiurim in my absence. Right? I'm not as organized as him. Source notes and everything like that, and titles of shiurim. Presentation. I see that's that. Multimedia. Okay, I'm an old-fashioned Rav. Here we go. All right. So I may have mentioned a few weeks back that I'm in the middle of repackaging some shiurim that I've been listening to on bitachon, and it is transformational. It is incredible, and I would like to borrow of this theme and Bezrat Hashem share some ideas of daily bitachon, which really, if you look at the Sefarim, is everything. For us to be able to be connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, tricky subject, very difficult. How one relies on Hashem for everything. We know that it's true. We know it's true in theory. Putting it into practice is an ongoing challenge. And some days are more difficult than others. But it's our everything. Our everything is how we can be connected to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and how we can survive the trials and the tribulations of the world that we live in. Being so powerless as we are and being given the illusion that somehow man and the mere mortal does have some power, and it's woven so beautifully into the narrative of this week's Parshat, correct? In Parshat Vayeshev, Yosef falls out with his brothers. We know that we suffer tremendously because of this, how it can happen. We have complex stories, Yehuda and Tamar, etc. But I'm going to focus on Yosef languishing away in prison right at the end of the parasha. It's the story of the episode you all know so well. He's languishing away in prison. The Sar HaOfim, the baker, and the Sar HaMashkim, the wine butler, they each have dreams. They tell their dreams to Yosef. You all know this. He provides them with the correct interpretations of the dreams. And Yosef interprets each dream, and he says, in another 3 days, you're going to be either reinstated or you're going to be finished. And if I could just focus on the words, Yosef says to the Vayomer Yosef zet pitrono shloshet hasarigim shloshet yamim hem, the 3 tendrils, these are the 3 days, ba'od shloshet yamim yisa parot roshecha, in 3 days Paro will count you, and veheshivcha al kanecha, loosely translated, he'll reinstate you, he'll give you back your position. V'natata kos Paro biyado, and you will place the goblet of Paro into his hand, kameshpat harishon asher hayita mashkehu, as you have so formerly done. You've done this, presumably, countless times, correct? The fellow who serves Paro his drinks has done it more than once. He says, you're going to serve Paro, v'natata kos Paro biyado kamishpat harishon. You're going to do it as you have formerly done it, as you've previously done this, asher hayita mashkehu, in which you used to do this. And Rabbi Akiva Eiger asks a question on this pasuk, and he asks the question, why does Yosef emphasize to this butler that he is going to be reinstated and do it as you've always been this cupbearer, you're going to do it again? It's a bit weird if you think about it. Imagine you're very accustomed to doing something. You could just say, you'll go back to it. You don't have to say, you were fired from your job as bank treasurer. Well, you're going to be the treasurer once again, as you have formerly done, and you're going to do the things that you normally did. No, you don't need to add that bit.
He probably made a mistake, right? So because he made a mistake, well, maybe I don't get everything that I had beforehand.
Let's hear Reb Akiva Eiger's answer, and you'll see how eerily close you are to what Reb Akiva Eiger is actually saying. It could have been, the question is, it would have been sufficient for him to say, V'natata kos paro b'yado, like you did originally. Reb Akiva Eiger asks his second question. Before we get on to the answer, he asks a second question. The very next pasuk, Yosef says, and I'd like to scrutinize the Lashon here just a little bit. The pasuk says, pasuk Yudalid, this is Perek Mem, Ki im zechartani. I don't really know how to translate Ki im zechartani, but if you would only remember me, so that you will remember me. Yeah? Itcha kashayitav lach. You remember, va'asita na'imati chesed, v'hizkartani el paro. At which time I want you to think of me, right? When you'll have been benefited and you'll be in your right position. Do kindness with me, v'hizkartani el paro. Remind my matter, my issue to Paro. V'hotzeitani min habayit hazeh. Please get me out of jail. Commute my sentence. Okay? So again, Reb Akiva Eiger asks a second question, right? And he says these words, Ki im zachartani. Yosef's intention surely is to say, and by the way, please remember me, right? But you should have said, U zachartani. Ki im zachartani seems to mean that so that you should remember me. You're going back to your position so that you should remember me. And Reb Akiva Eiger answers quite beautifully. And he says, if Yosef would have just told the Sarah Mashkim that he's going to get his job back, imagine he doesn't put any more elaboration on it, like we first suggested, that he would have been probably a nervous wreck. Who was the other person in this dream? Who was the other person in this story who had dreams, I should say? The baker. We all know that his end was not as glamorous, not as fortunate, not as wonderful as this one. He made a mistake. By the way, they both are pretty equal in their crimes that they had done, correct? They both were serving Pharaoh. Both served a foreign object in their, their chosen culinary areas, right? A fly in the drink? Why are you shaking your head at me?
You've got no control of what the fly does.
I understand that, but if you... But both people... So if anything, it should be... Okay, fair enough.
And that's why he lived.
Okay, very good. But it could also make him very nervous, that he would never be able to do it again. But you're right, it could be. You could equate the two, true. Not smart, not everyone's as smart as you, right? It's true. Both of them served Pharaoh with a foreign object in his drink, or in the food. One of them was sentenced to death, the other one was reinstated. It could be that if he's serving Pharaoh as he has to do, he may have done it quite comfortably in the past, but now he'll be such a nervous wreck, he'll never be able to do it properly again in the future. Like you said, he doesn't control what falls into the drink sometimes, right? And if it happens again, he would be so jittery and he would not be able to do it. So Yosef tells him, don't worry. You don't have to worry. You did nothing wrong. It wasn't your fault. Every time you served Pharaoh a goblet, you actually checked to make sure if there was a fly in there. So how did a fly actually end up in there? How did it happen that when Pharaoh came to drink, there was a fly in his waiter, there's a fly in... How did it happen? Said Yosef, I'm going to teach you a rule about life. Hashem controls everything. Everything. You think you're in control of something? You're not. You're not. You thought you were being careful, you did your due diligence. Okay. What happened? Hashem made it happen. And do you know why it happened? Ki im zachartani. So that you should only be in a position now to remember and tell Pharaoh about me. You're going to get your job back, and you're not just going to place the cup in Pharaoh's hand. You're going to do it kamishpat harishon asher hayita mashkeu. Don't worry about it. You won't be a nervous wreck. You'll realize and you'll take on this incredible, deep idea and deep understanding of what it means to be a person in this world, and you'll understand that if you take this lesson to heart, every second of your life, Hashem is determining where you should be and in exactly what position you should be. And I know sometimes we have the illusion that sometimes we're more in control and sometimes we're less in control, and it's absolutely an illusion. We have to understand that we are here at the behest of Hashem. We say every single morning, Elokai neshama shenatata bi tahorahi v'ata atid litla mimeni. I have no say on who has a neshama and who hasn't. But one thing's for certain, so long as I have a breath in my body, I'm going to attribute it to you. Everything, Hashem, comes from you. Says Rabbi Akiva Eiger, Yosef is teaching a very deep lesson to this butler. And that's why the expression is so clear. I'm always scared of questions, but go for it.
It's funny because he's teaching a lesson, but that's whether we complain that he fails.
Brilliant. I have the same question.
Yeah.
Sorry? No, it's a brilliant question. We know that Yosef gets challenged on the fact that ki imza chartani, he shouldn't have said anything. He should have known it to be true. You could answer, I was thinking about this before, you could argue and say he's only saying it for the butler to get it clear and it not for himself. But, and on some deep level, and maybe we'll explore this in a little while, on some deep level that was still a pagam in his bitachon, still a deficiency in his level of belief in Hashem, that he should have only and utterly relied on Hashem.
That still has to stay the same.
Correct.
He should have. I mean, that's why he got the extra.
Correct,
year.
2 years.
And so it's perhaps because he was teaching this lesson, but he didn't see it himself.
I don't know. I'm struggling with it. Yeah. It's a good question. On Rabbi Akiva Eiger, it's definitely a good question. Double trouble with brothers. Go on. It's true, right? Everyone else is so well behaved. Come on, please.
No pressure.
Yeah. Sorry. Come on, we love it.
One thing is thinking that everything, and believing everything is coming from Hashem. That's great.
Correct.
It's understood. But do you have to be 100% reliant on doing no issue with yourself?
Oh, so this is a huge discussion, and I refer you to the awfully complex and challenging sefer which I'm trying to get through on my own, the Chazon Ish's sefer emunah bitachon. It is not easy in the slightest. There is, by the way, I saw brought down from one of the big rebbes of this generation, the reason why Sfarim have not been published on this is because for each person in each situation it's different. How much hishtadlut you have to do. One thing I will say, and that is, Rabbi Yisrael Salanta said this, the founder of the Muslim movement, hishtadlut, you making your efforts in this world equals nisayon. That equals your challenge. Why? Because you have to do it. You have to go through the motions of the 9 to 5 and trying to make money. However, the catch is that when money actually comes in, you have to then attribute it all and totally to Hashem. So where's the balance between that? It differs from situation to situation, person to person. It's incredibly challenging. But I will try and elaborate a little bit on this in the stories to come, hopefully. And this is, I guess, it's my newfound challenge to put out. I'm only up to my 22nd episode of having recorded episode 22nd this morning, right? I can tell you I'm in my baby steps of this, and Bli Neder, I will publish this in due time. But I guess the more I build up, the more anticipation. It's incredibly complex. It's not easy at all. However, the foundations are life-changing. A person who can live with it, as hopefully we'll go on to say. I saw 2 stories. I'd like to share with you 3 or 4 stories if time permits. So, I saw Rabbi Franz writing about, he heard a story involving the same kind of incident about a man called Gary Turgo. He lives in Detroit, Michigan. And he was at, he was at a Torah Masorah conference, which Torah Masorah looks after all of the educational needs of American Jewry. They put together programs. My sister works for them, right? I've been to a couple of the conferences. They're absolutely magical. And one of the speakers at one of their recent conventions was this fellow called Gary Turgo. He's from Detroit, like I said. And he spoke at the conference and he talked about 2 stories of amazing hashgacha pratit in his life. And I've got the details here in front of me so that I shouldn't make them, I shouldn't get them wrong or whatever. He's on the board of directors of Blue Cross, Blue Shield of Michigan. And he was attending a meeting of this organization, and at that meeting, he was actually planning on announcing his resignation. He felt to himself that he'd given a lot to this organization. He also felt that of the time-consuming elements of this, he really couldn't contribute that much more. He had done his obligations. He had far more pressing issues to deal with, and not to undermine any good deed that anyone does. But sometimes you have to economize and think, where's my time best served? And he had thought to himself that he's better off doing something else. And he was sitting up there on the dais next to a woman who was the head of Blue Cross, Blue Shield of Michigan, right? And while he was sitting there, his phone buzzed, and he got a text. And he got a text that someone in NYU needed an emergency life or death operation. However, Blue Cross, Blue Shield, hadn't yet signed off on this operation, which needed to happen kind of like now or never. And they asked Gary Turgo in he's a big Askan, he's a big doer for Klal Yisrael. They said, do you have any connection to Blue Cross? It was just like a long shot, right? Do you know anyone at Blue Cross, Blue Shield that can help? And he literally just took his phone and he showed the screen to the woman sitting alongside him, right? And within 5 minutes, the operation was signed off on, and this person got their life-saving operation. And he told the Torah Masorah Convention, guess what? I didn't resign from my post at Blue Cross Blue Shield, right? That's literally an incident of Ki'im Zechartani. Why did Hashem put this Gary Turgo on the board for who knows how many years? It felt like it was like he said it felt like there was a batco coming out of heaven, talking to him and telling him exactly what to do. You need to be on this board. You need to be there. You've been placed there in order to save a life. You don't know that when you take that position. You don't know that. He was also the president of a bank, of a major financial institution in Detroit. And again, the second story he mentioned at the same Torah Masorah Convention, he said he got a call from a Jewish man who started to really berate him, chastising him. And this guy really came out, all guns blazing, brandishing all weapons he could verbally on this phone of like, how can you as a religious Jew be part of this organization which is such a filthy institution, da-da-da. And he's like, whoa, what's the problem? And he said like this, what's the problem? He said his wife had recently passed away. This man's wife had passed away, and he had fallen behind on some of his mortgage payments. And the bank sent him a letter that they were foreclosing on his property. And he said, it's insane. You can't foreclose on my property. There's $5,000 that's left outstanding on a mortgage, on a whole property. And the house is worth several $100,000. You can't. He was 7 months behind on his monthly payments towards this $5,000, and then they're foreclosing. And this guy was screaming at him, how can you be president of such a bank? There's such wicked people, they're disgraceful people. Now, on the phone, Mr. Turgo said, listen, I'll promise to look into this, right? But just calm down, I understand things are difficult. Please give me some time, let me look into it. He hung up and he looked into it and he found out that the facts were actually, the fellow calling was telling the truth. The facts were true. He had $5,000 left on his mortgage, which was amazing, right? But they'd also, as is very often in financial institutions, the bank had sold the mortgage, sold the debt on to someone else years and years and years ago, right? The other bank saw this as a golden opportunity. Why? Because there's almost no debt left on this building, and if they foreclose and take it, they're making an absolute killing, right? So from a financial perspective, it wasn't his bank that was making the decision. It was fairly disgusting to do a thing like this, and it was very opportunistic, and it was kicking someone when they were down. Mr. Turgo looked at this and he thought, $5,000, you know what? I'll take care of it. So behind the man's back, he just called the other bank and said, I'm looking into this case, and by the way, I have a one-time payment. If there's penalties to be paid, I'll pay it, but I'm paying it off early, right? And he paid the $5,000 himself, okay? And the man was able to stay in his house. The one thing that surprised Mr. Turgo in all of this was that the fellow never called him back. So the bank president thought to himself, I saved this person's house. He came at me very viciously. He attacked me a lot. He personally insulted me, and I responded with kindness. But not even a thank you, not even a text, not even a thumbs up, nothing. Right? Maybe we'd say in our language, poco vergüenza, no? Like a little bit, come on, right? For all those on YouTube, you can look it up, right? It's a little bit, right? Several months later, this man died in his house, that house that this president saved. And he left in his will the entire house to Gary Turgo, right? And he instructed him that the proceeds of the sale of the house was to go to any tzedakah of his choice. That's what he said. Again, Ki'im Zechartani. Who knows why you are, where you are. We're not in this for the thank yous. We're not here. We just have to realize that these moments don't happen so dramatically. Hashem has his way of putting us where he needs us to be, and we, as good Jews, need to realize that the only reason, the Yesod is true, the only reason Yosef came face to face with this man in jail was Ki'im Zachatani. He needed to understand that. Again, Michael, you're right. What level of Yosef wasn't complete with this idea? I don't know. It's difficult. And I can tell you a very, very difficult Rashi. Very difficult Rashi. What does Rashi say at the beginning of Noach? Noach was building this teva. How long for? 120 years. Can you imagine the ridicule of doing that in the public town square? When the whole world is into its debauchery and its disgustingness and its selfishness, what have you, and the one long-bearded rabbi sitting there trying to build the thing, and what does he come with? This crazy tale of doom, right? Armageddon. Judgment Day.
They think he's nuts.
They think he's crazy, of course. How much thickness of skin do you need to be able to withstand 120 years of ridicule? I bet his local chronicle, wrote about him a couple of times, right? Like Kulat on Main Street, I'm much thinking of it, right? Like what?
The guy with the white.
Right? It is also crazy, right? But what happens? The pasuk says in Noach that Noach went into the teva mipnei mei hamabul. What does Rashi say? Miketanei amanahaya. He was of the lesser emunah people. Why? Because only when the rain started did he believe it was coming, and he went into the mud. 120 years. He knew it. But yet what Rashi is saying is he knew it maybe here, didn't know it here. How do you even explain that? I don't know. But I'll tell you a story. And this is one of the guiding principles of emunah and bitachon. Emunah is knowing it. Bitachon is living it. If we don't live it, it means we don't know it enough. And that's why if you look at all the sefarim on emunah and bitachon, we need to study it daily. You need to remind yourself of it daily. You need to repeat the words, Ani ma'amin be'emunah shelema sha'borei yitbarach shmo borei u'manhig. I believe with entire absolute faith that Hashem is the only master conductor of this earthly orchestra, pulling all of the strings. Nothing moves without him. Nothing. V'hu manhig borei u'manhig l'chol habrim. He creates and guides every single aspect of creation. And from Donald Trump to every blade of grass and everything in between. V'asa oseh v'yaseh l'chol ha'masim. Did and will do everything. We're pawns along for the ride. But if you look deeply, the yesod of this is it takes daily effort. It takes daily work. And only when we truly give up to this do the miracles happen. The truth is, according to the Chovot HaLevavot, we should never get nervous. If we internalize this 100%, we should never get nervous, ever. I'll tell you two stories. There's a Rosh Kolel I know in Bnei Brak. Big man. It's on his series of shiurim of bitachon that I'm repackaging and selling them on. But he said he had a bunch of avrechim that would come to him time and again and say to him, Rebbe, I can't come to learn on time today. I've got this issue, got that issue, children, whatever. And credit to them, they're still raising families and they're committed to Torah, learning every single day. Their pay packet is not huge. And sometimes they say, I can't make it, dentist appointment, whatever it is. And the rabbi would say to them, there's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avot, Kol HaMakabel Alav Ol Torah, Kabel Al Atzmo Torah, Ma'virin Mimenu, right? All Malchut, V'ol Derech Eretz. If you totally accept upon yourself that this is your position in life, your issue will go away. But you have to accept it. You commit. You say, I'm not going to miss a moment of my learning, and you'll see your issue goes away. The problem is people don't commit 100%. They believe it, but they don't believe it. He said, I know it's difficult to say such a thing. He said he has tens of stories, if not hundreds of stories, of courageous young men who have accepted his guidance. And one after the other, they say to him, and their issues have gone away. One after the other. I know a story of a wealthy man, who came to this same Rav to interpret for him. They took him into Rav Steinman, Zichrono Livracha, and the fellow said to him, explain to Rav Steinman, explain to him that I was a wealthy man, and I gave a lot of tzedakah. I was very careful with maaser, and I've lost all my wealth. And I want to understand how it could happen. And as he's explaining to Rav Steinman thumps on the table, bangs on the table, and he says, Hashem is a liar. Are you saying God doesn't tell you the truth? And the man's looking at him like, I didn't say anything wrong, I'm asking the question. He said, Hashem promises that if a person gives maaser meticulously, aser bishvil shetis asher, you will be wealthy. So the man said, okay, then that forces the question. He did this. And then Reb Shlomo went on, he said, many people don't know this. The Vilna Gaon says, anybody who gives chomesh, twice maaser, that's harder to give, are guaranteed wealth. Guaranteed, 100%. I know a certain person in America, he flew here recently on a private jet. Maybe I shouldn't say this out loud. It's going on YouTube now. Okay, delete that from the record. But whatever. Wealthy man, he, on principle, when money comes in from a deal, he gives away 20% without thinking. After pays taxes and but 20% goes to tzedakah straight away. He's enormously successful. So this wealthy man's asking Rosh Hashanah, okay, so it begs the question. He says, the Vilna Gaon is a liar? You're telling me the Vilna Gaon doesn't say what's true? So Rosh Hashanah said, so the man asked, okay, I did give maaser. I actually gave chomesh. I gave much more than that. So how's it possible I lost my wealth? So Rosh Hashanah said, the two caveats over here that you need to be very careful of. Number one, a person has to be extremely careful. Sorry?
No, I was thinking maybe wealth isn't always physical, it could be spiritual.
A good point. But he said a person has to be very careful that the money was gained legally. If it's gazel, this deal doesn't apply. Same is true, by the way, with ribit. A person has to be very, very careful that there's no ribit involved. That's a very, very... It's brought down in Sefarim. Sometimes it can happen that a person, Rachmana litzlan or Lechem v'Aleinu, has been... There's a gezerah on the person that their life should terminate early. And sometimes, although the Rebbe Steinman says it rarely happens, that a person's wealth will be taken away, and ani chashuv kamet, it could happen. But other than that, a person has to totally understand and believe that things, this is what we have to work on every single day. What does the pasuk say? V'hitanag al Hashem, totally give up to Hashem, v'yiten lecha, He will give you, mishalot libecha. Could be the people who don't believe in it enough as it doesn't come. It's one of the yisodot in emunah and bitachon. So I want to leave you with a story which is very close to home at the moment for me, Baruch Hashem, right? And I thank you all for everybody's warm wishes, etc. And if anyone's in London next Thursday night, the Mitzvah Hashem will have a big engagement party. I don't know, an engagement party somewhere. Is it? Usually knows where it is, right? I just put the announcements out. But I'll tell you a brilliant story that happened. I don't remember exactly in which year it was in. I thought I wrote it down. Yeah, I did. 2019. So this is not an old story, from hundreds of years ago. And the story happened to somebody who published it very beautifully. Fantastic. It goes like this. There was a fellow who was just getting involved in the shidduch parasha for one of his children. And it was new for him. And he was a person who, by his own admission, lived very, very simply. He was not a wealthy man, and he lived very frugally. And his family knew his policy: when Hashem gives us, we can get. And when we have nothing, so we do without. It's not a problem. And the children grew up in a very healthy fashion, in a very modest fashion, but in a very solid fashion. And when shidduch suggestions started to come in for his daughter, he started to feel a little overwhelmed. One of the first things a person is lumped with when it comes to finding a shidduch is shadchanas geld. I'm sure you've heard of this, right? But the person who makes the suggestion and the shadchan, the person, the go-between, right, is a person who, after the shidduch goes through, deserves, it's expected that they will be paid. And he said, whilst I can live day to day, but to come up with however many thousands of euros or pounds it is to get, I don't have that. So he said, even if this suggestion should come through, and he's looking at suggestions right now, he's like, how in the world am I coming up with it? It could be in weeks' time. What am I doing? How? And he started to panic a little bit, and he was upset with himself that a man who lives with so much faith, and so I should panic at the first little wobble. Like, what's happening over here? And he was upset with himself, and he was going back and forth, but there's tons of things going on in his head, and it's his own child, and he hopes that they're going to be well, and the shidduch should go well, and whatever it may be. There were so many suggestions, he was being overwhelmed, and just so much going on. He did not have what we call yishuv hadat. He did not have the calmness of the mind to logically think things through and speak correctly to himself. And he was upset at himself at being in this frazzled position, maybe self-inflicted partly as well, and he was upset with himself, and he was hosting that Shabbat It was Parashat Baha'alotecha. I don't know why I know that, right? 2019. This was when he was getting upset with himself. That Friday night, he hosted a very talented young bachur, right? A yeshiva boy. Very, very well spoken, very deep thinking, very well thought out. And as they're sitting there and enjoying the Shabbat meal, he said to him, let's talk about bitachon. You want to speak Torah? I'm struggling. I need some chizuk. Let's talk bitachon. So the bachur said, let me tell you a story. Okay? He said, let me tell you a story, and I know the story personally. There's a certain man called Reb Asher Freund, right? And he hired a contractor to build some buildings in Ramot. Okay? And yeah, they'd drawn up the plans, right? 4D planning, I'm sure, were involved, right? People, all the plans were there. And when they said yes to the contractor, you'll know this, the contractor needs a down payment before they'll start anything. Okay? The amount he needed to come up with was 2 million shekel. Okay? And it was about 3 days before he needed to come up with the money. And this fellow, of course, the projected returns would be good once everything's there, but to get the ball rolling, he didn't even have bank finance to start with, right? And he was hoping to come up with the money from friends and family. 2 million shekels is a pretty significant amount. And he's a solid Torah person. He cried to Hashem. He cried to Hashem and he said, please Hashem, I'm so nervous, where's it going to come from? And he realized that as he's speaking to Hashem from a very negative place. He's speaking to Hashem from a very nervous place. And he chastised himself mid-prayer. And he made the following cheshbon. I said, I want you to listen very carefully to this. He said to himself, if I had the money today, if I actually had 2 million shekel today, I need the money for 3 days' time, correct? What would I do with the money for 3 days? What would I do? Well, I'm hoping you don't think stick it under your pillow or under your mattress. You put it in a bank, right? Hashem's any worse than a bank? If it's in the bank, then I'm going to feel good? Hashem's holding it right now. I shouldn't feel any of that. He changed his prayer. He changed his prayer. And he said, I don't want to be anxious today. If I get it there, I'll put it in the bank. All he changed his prayer to is, Hashem, I want to only trust in you. I don't want to trust in anything else. I want to trust in you. That I'm changing my prayer. I want to be so shalem that you take care of me that I worry not. That, by the way, what it means to achieve the level of a Baal bitachon. A Baal bitachon, says the Chazon Ish, never worries. Hashem's got me. He's holding your hand. Literally every beat of your heart is a gift from him. So's every penny. So's every leaf, everything. You don't have to worry. You do not have to worry. True, how much ishtadlut you have to do? Good question, yeah?
On the other hand, who are we to ask Hashem for that kind of attention?
You're right, it's a great question, but the Sfarim and Chazal say it's exactly what he wants. V'haboteach b'Hashem, chesed Yosef avenu. Hashem knows the challenge you live with daily. And if you give up those daily challenges and say, Hashem, I'm nothing in this anyways. I know it's only you. You've achieved a level of closeness with him, which he's happy to repay. It's what it is. You look at you say this, I could say it 100 different ways. Right? Again and again and again. It's pure chesed. You're a father. How much do you love your children? How much do you want to give your children? You say to Hashem, you love me. I don't deserve any. I know that. I'm not being a good boy. I love you. 100%. That's his version, so to speak, of unconditional love. What doesn't work, and which is arrogant and wrong, is when a person says, I've got this, I'm a good businessman. That upsets Hashem. And when a person really thinks they've got it, Hashem's going to show you, you don't. And the reverse is also true. The reverse of that coin, and we need to work on it and work on it and work on it and work on it. Hashem, it's only you. I know I do hishtadlut, and I know you've made me good at what I do because you make me good at it. But I'm not under the illusion for 1 second that it's me who's good at this. No, it's all you. And that's a madriga. That's really challenging. That's really tricky. And if a person can get to that madriga, you can literally ask Hashem for anything, and it'll come. This person changed his lashon, and he said, "I'm not. Just allow me to rely on you." Would you believe it? On the day he needed 2 million shekel, he got it. I'll leave you with one story. One story. I have the moments. Okay, left. And don't forget, this was a story that was being told to this father who's in the shidduchim, right? And this fella told him the story on Friday night, okay? Not long after, his daughter gets engaged. And he felt really strengthened. He felt, okay, fine. I have to come up with a few thousand words. I don't know where it's coming from, but I don't have to. Okay? And it came to the time that they were doing the engagement party, the vote, right? And he understood that the shadchan who made the shidduch would be at the vote. He was going to meet them for the first time. And it's accepted that you go with an envelope in your pocket. And he was literally, this man lives in London. He was literally about to get on the tube to go to his own daughter's engagement party when he remembered he has nothing. And he prayed to Hashem this prayer. He changed his prayer from nervousness because of this story to Hashem, just please accept the little trust that I have in you as a lot. Right? I came without an umbrella. It's just important. Hashem, it's all up to you. Right? Do you know why? I checked the weather before I came. It says it's not raining till 7 o'clock. So I said, yeah, shkoyach. Chazak u'berur.
I'm sure after Mincha it'll be clear.
Who knows? I have a 2 o'clock meeting, guys. Right? But you know what? He said, he changed his prayer to, Hashem, please accept my little trust in you as a lot. I'm trusting in you. He was going to get on the tube to go to his daughter's engagement, and he remembered one thing. He teaches in a certain yeshiva in London, and there was a wonderful, wonderful boy who was part of that institution, who was, shall we say, not very domesticated when it comes to looking after himself. He was a brilliant guy, a wonderful boy, an excellent thinker. But when it comes to the practicalities of life, like remembering to brush his teeth, he needed a lot of help. And this boy had been away, ill, for quite a while. And he had this Rebbe had just received a text to say, this boy's coming back, and could you please help him, settle in? And he thinks to himself, I really ought to do this before I go to the engagement. But should I go to the engagement? I'll be late to my own daughter's engagement. Fashionably late. What do I do? Do the mitzvah? Do not? He says, I'm going to go and look after this boy first. You know what? My daughter's engagement, it'll wait. People will come in and dribs and drabs, no problem. So he goes to this yeshiva and he finds the boy, done a lot of traveling. He was tired, he was disheveled, he was all over the place, and he really needed a little calming influence, and he was so happy. The Rebbe was so happy he was there. He's there unpacking. He takes the hanging stuff out, he hangs the stuff in the cupboard, he takes all the things that need to be folded, puts them in the shelves. He's unpacking a suitcase for him. And he asks him, where do you want this? Where should we put it? If I put this here, will you remember? Literally like babying this yeshiva boy who needed the help. And he felt himself, Ki'im Zachartani, I'm in the right place, Hashem will have me where I need to be. As he's closing the suitcase, he sees there's a sleeve inside the suitcase with a zipper, something bulging out, right? He takes out an envelope, and on the envelope, it's written, and I wrote the words, to the dedicated Rav, helping my child unpack, thank you. And he opened the envelope, and in it was 2,000 euros. He said in his 30 years of teaching, he had never received a bonus anywhere close to that. Sometimes people give a little something here and there before Pesach or whatever, that there should be thousands of euros there. He had 2 outstanding big bills, 1,000 for the shadchan, and he also wanted to buy his new son-in-law Shas, which would also probably cost him around 1,000. His 2,000 fell in his lap. Ki im zechartani, we learn from here, Hashem is in control of everything. The more we can ascribe greatness to that, the more we can tap into it, and Bezrat Hashem, the more we do, the more the bracha will flow for us all, Bezrat Hashem, b'karov mamash.